On the night of September 2nd, 1998, a Boeing 747 was lifted off from New York's JFK Airport, bound for Geneva. To the passengers, Swissair Flight 111 was more than just another transatlantic journey. It was a bridge between worlds, businessmen chasing deals in Europe, vacationers returning home, and even diplomats and scientists carrying secrets of international importance. For the crew, it was routine. For the 229 souls on board, it was meant to be just another flight. But within hours, it would become one of aviation's darkest tragedies. They called Swissair the flying bank. Precision, wealth, and safety were part of its DNA. To step aboard was to trust a company with one of the cleanest records in the sky, which makes what happened that night not just tragic, but shocking. Because this aircraft, Flight 111, would never arrive. About an hour into the journey, somewhere above the Atlantic near Nova Scotia, the crew noticed something strange. A faint smell. Smoke, perhaps. But it seemed harmless at first. In the world of aviation, smoke can mean many things, most of them not catastrophic. Pilots are trained to remain calm, troubleshoot, and if necessary, have fun. And that's exactly what Captain Urs Zimmermann and First Officer Stefan Lüb did. They requested to land in Halifax, just minutes away. But time is a merciless variable in the air. What began as a faint smell, something became far more sinister. Smoke thickened, systems flickered, and the plane, once a marvel of engineering, started turning into a prison of fire. Investigators would later determine the source: a wiring fault that ignited flammable insulation material tucked behind the cockpit walls. It wasn't just any insulation. It was a high-tech film known as metallized mylar, prized for being lightweight and soundproof, but devastatingly vulnerable to fire. Once sparked, it burned fast and furious, hidden behind panels, feeding on oxygen, spreading beyond reach. The crew fought to save their aircraft. They followed procedure. They donned masks, began a rapid descent, tried to dump fuel to lighten their load for landing. But the fire moved faster than any checklist could handle. Within minutes, critical instruments failed. Darkness swallowed the cockpit. The pilots were flying blind in a machine unraveling around them. At 10:31 p.m., Swissair Flight 111 vanished from radar. Moments later, the ocean off Peggy's Cove erupted in silence as 229 lives ended in an instant. The crash stunned the world. How could one of the safest airlines lose its flagship jet so suddenly? The investigation would last over 4 years, costing tens of millions of dollars. What they found reshaped aviation forever. The fire had been invisible until it was unstoppable. The mylar insulation that wrapped the jet like a second skin was identified as a silent killer. Flammable, toxic, and virtually uncontrollable once lit. Regulators had approved it, manufacturers had used it, airlines had trusted it. But Flight 111 proved what the manuals didn't say. It turned the plane into a tinderbox. The aftermath forced sweeping changes. Flammable insulation materials were banned. Cockpit checklists were rewritten. Pilots were trained not just to troubleshoot, but to act immediately, land, no matter what, at the first sign of smoke. The lessons of Swissair 111 ripple through every modern flight today. But beyond regulations and safety protocols lies the human weight of that night. The quiet fishing villages of Nova Scotia became the front line of grief. Fishermen who set out to sea expecting cod found themselves hauling fragments of an airliner instead. Families from over 40 countries descended on Halifax, searching for answers, for closure, for loved ones who would never return. The local community responded with a tenderness that still echoes. Strangers housing families, churches opening their doors, children placing flowers on makeshift memorials by the shore. Even now, decades later, the story of Swissair 111 lingers like salt in the air. Not just as a tragedy of fire and flight, but as a reminder of fragility. How the smallest spark, hidden in the walls of an aircraft, can ripple outward into oceans of loss. There's a memorial today at Peggy's Cove. Granite stones carved with names, looking out over the Atlantic where the plane went down. Visitors speak of the wind there, how it carries a stillness that feels almost sacred, as if the sea itself remembers. When we board a plane today, we trust in the invisible layers of safety designed from tragedies like this. We rarely think about the people who paid the ultimate price to make flying safer. But Swissair Flight 111 insists we remember. 229 lives, lost in a storm of fire and smoke, remind us that perfection is an illusion, that trust is fragile, and that every flight is, in some way, a leap of faith.